This is the Saturn60. It's a massive chunker of a board featuring a unique bent steel case and a design reminiscent of retro typewriters. In the box, we are greeted with a packet containing all the necessary screws, badges, LED strips, and a handle for the case. My kit also came with the Titan 60 PCB, which I won't be using here since it's just a temporary build. Wrapped in paper, we've also got the gasket-mounted angled aluminum plate, and the case itself is the Moon Dust colorway, and it comes in two parts, pre-assembled, a top and bottom housing. There are a few foam inserts for gaskets and sound dampening as well. Because this board will be going to somebody else, I'll actually be using a hot swap DZ60 so I can easily disassemble it later on. As with all of my builds, we'll also be using Durock V2 stabs, easily the best in my opinion. With that, we're also going to be using clicky Kale box white switches, going with a sort of vintage theme, but I'll also include a sound test using some Holy Boba tactile switches and some alpaca linears at the end. If you've seen any of my previous builds, then you'll know that I always like to holy mod my stabs. If you haven't seen them, links are below. To prepare for lubing, I like to use this rubber pad for my coffee bar, and I also have a small box of lubing tools including a brush, tweezers, stem holder, and the lube itself, Krytox 205 grade 0. Holy modding means cutting a sliver of fabric band-aid, yes, specifically fabric, and wrapping the inner part of the stabilizer stem. I like to do this step in 4 parts. First, cut your band-aid into a strip roughly the width of the inside opening of the stabilizer stem. Second, insert the band-aid strip into the top ramp as shown using tweezers. Third, bend it and push it through the hole and out the other end to cover the bottom portion of the ramp. And fourth, trim off the excess using something like a nail cutter. Now repeat this step for the rest of the stabilizers, and then we can move on to lubing. For lube, I go thick with Krytox 205 grade 0 on the outside of the stems, the inside of the housings, and a thick layer on the wires, one side at a time, unlike the way I'm doing it here, so that we don't have to get our fingers too greasy. Then to assemble, first make sure the stem is facing the right way with the slope going down, facing out towards the side for the wire. Then install the wires one side at a time. After that, we can install it onto our board, and for this build, I was digging through my storage box of keyboard parts and didn't actually realize until this step that I was missing 2 sets of 2U stabs, but that's going to be a problem for the future. My WoW stick makes quick work of screwing in these stabs, link in description just under that subscribe and like button. Once the PCB is ready, we're going to need to install it onto the aluminum plate by lining it up properly, then pushing in a few switches to hold it in place. I went ahead and also filled the board with switches entirely at this step. So these Kale box whites were my first time trying out clickies that weren't MX Blues, and I very highly recommend you try them out yourself. You might surprise yourself with how much you like properly made clicky switches, plus they're readily available on Amazon, also linked below. And don't worry, as mentioned before for the sound test, I will be showing a quick comparison to linears and tactiles as well for those who aren't a fan of clicky switches. Now moving on to the case. We want to install the back badge by lining up the inner rubber piece with the holes in the bottom case and mounting the badge from the back using the included M3 screws and nuts, being careful not to over tighten and break the rubber. Nobody likes a broken rubber. The handle is super easy to install and is easily threaded onto the case with the included washer and nut. And next we need to install the USB-C daughter board onto the top housing, and this is again easily done with just a few M3 screws from the outside of the case going in. Now, to install our PCB and plate into the case, I'm first going to be using just a little bit of double-sided tape to secure the outer foam bracket and align our PCB and plate combo accordingly. If you don't have double-sided tape, just fold a normal piece of tape backwards and over itself. Then all we need to do is insert the other piece of foam and close the case. There are several M3 screws that need to be inserted around the case, 5 on the top and 8 on the butt, and then I installed the bump-ons on each corner of the case. Once everything's looking good, I threw on some SA keycaps from KeyMonkey because they were super cheap and a really nice way for me to try out the SA profile, as it adds to that retro feel. But like the thumbnail shows, I will also be using a GMK Cafe afterwards for a second sound test. Then I used masking tape to help me perfectly align the Saturn60 badge, since you really only get one shot at this, and I think it came out perfectly. All you gotta do is add a few strips horizontally and vertically, perfectly lining up with the edges of the board to keep it perfectly straight. And finally, I also went ahead and used just a touch of WD-40 on the handle to make it a little bit smoother and wiped away the excess. And now it's time for the sound test with these SA keycaps followed by GMK Cafe. And that's going to be it for my build of the Saturn60 by Ace Keyboard Co. Personally, my favorite sound was the Holy Bobas with GMK keycaps, but let me know which combo was your favorite in the comment section down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, leave a like if you did, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.